Welcome back, everybody. Today, I have the honor and privilege of speaking to Akshay Nanavati, a fearless explorer, a veteran, an entrepreneur, speaker, and the author of Fearvana. From battling PTSD after serving in Iraq to embracing the brutal cold of polar expeditions, today he shares his journey, how he managed to overcome adversity, cultivate a resilient mindset, and conquer his fears to reach glimpses of enlightenment. In November, Akshay will be setting foot into Antarctica to begin a 1,700-mile walk across the continent, where he will be dragging a 400-pound sled filled with all his supplies needed to survive a 110-day journey in one of the most unforgiving environments on the planet to break 3 world records. I am so excited to have him on the show today to share his profound wisdom with you all. So, Akshay, thank you for being here and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. So, Akshay, this is such an interesting story. I first found out about you when I was in Arizona and I went to the Grey Wolf Summit. And
Mhm.
you told us your incredible story on your journey of how you came to be someone who seeks out expeditions and sort of plays on the edges of like suffering and joy. And I just think that your story is so unique. Do you want to share a little bit about how this came about for you in your life?
Sure. Yeah. Background that kind of led me to the person that I am and the path that I'm on now. I was born in India, grew up to not wealthy, but middle class family. So I didn't really know suffering. I didn't know struggle. My parents, if they went through any ordeals, they didn't share with me. So I didn't know too much about it. Moved from India to Singapore to Austin, Texas at 13. Very soon after moving to the US, I got heavily into drugs, into alcohol, lost 2 friends to addiction, was extremely self-destructive, still have scars on my arm from cutting myself, burning myself, and was on the path of, I would have lost my life just like my 2 friends. But thankfully, I saw this movie Black Hawk Down, which I don't know if you have you seen the movie?
I think I've seen it, but a long time
It's
ago.
an old one. It's an old one now. Yeah, it's a war movie based on a true story. And watching that movie changed my life. It got me out of drugs almost overnight. And just watching the courage of men sacrificing their lives for another human being, it touched my soul and it planted the seed in me that got me out of drugs and into the Marines. It took me a while to get into the Marines because I have a blood disorder that 2 doctors told me would kill me in boot camp. So I had to fight my way in to get into the Marines. I'm also flat-footed and have scoliosis. So all these factors were disqualifying, but this was a post 9/11 military world, right? So joining the military for a young kid who wants to go infantry, they found a way kind of thing. And I'm so grateful they did because being a Marine is not only one of the greatest honors of my life, it laid the foundation for everything about who I am today. For one, it taught me the beauty of suffering. It taught me the value of going to war with yourself and seeing that you can find something within to transcend whatever comes your way. And that was profoundly beautiful to discover that within myself. But it also taught me the value of living for the good of the group. In the Marines, your well being is of least importance. What matters is the men and the mission. And it is, while challenging at times, it is profoundly beautiful to experience a world like that, where you live for someone other than you and you suffer for something other than yourself. So that planted the seed that got me into outdoor sports to find other ways to challenge myself and confront my fears. In 2007, I was deployed to Iraq as an infantry Marine, where one of my jobs was to walk in front of our vehicles looking for bombs before they could be used to kill me and my fellow Marines. So a pretty dangerous job. But I learned through all of this to thrive in the face of fear and adversity. Once again, kind of building myself into this person I am now today. But the biggest battle was after the war. I struggled with PTSD, depression, lost friends to war, to junior Marines, to suicide. And I started drinking heavily. I mean, a bottle of vodka a day, like throwing up in the toilet, still drinking. After days on end, I'd continue this descent into the abyss. But one morning, after 5 days of this, I woke up and was seconds away from slitting my own wrists. And that moment was the rock bottom moment that I needed to climb out of this darkness. And that's what began my journey into writing Fearvana, into researching neuroscience, psychology, spirituality, to building the business, and ultimately to embark upon these adventures on the edge and really found my salvation through this because this was ultimately every one of these, from running ultra marathons to spending 10 days in darkness to being in Antarctica, lost 2 fingers to frostbite. All of this were very spiritual journeys of, as you said in the very kind introduction, was tapping into experiences of enlightenment to unearth the treasures of the human soul that can only be found on the edge, and then ultimately bring it back to share with everybody who suffers in some way or the other.
Wow, that's incredible. That is
Been
so,
a
so
good
interesting.
journey.
Yeah, no, you've definitely been through a lot of life experience, and I think it's really beautiful how it really just all the suffering led you back to you, like it led you back to yourself, and you know, and that higher calling of like, what is your
Yeah.
soul, like, what is your soul's calling? What is that
Yeah.
calling that you have? And
Hmm.
I'm so curious, like you've gone on other expeditions.
Hmm.
Um, did you ever or do you experience, like the human mind, right? The human mind that's telling you you can't do it, you shouldn't do it, don't do it, the fear, all the negative self-talk. Do you
Hmm.
experience that when you're preparing for your expedition?
Great question. It's a lot less than it used to be. But it's not that it's not there. I don't think I have the talk of like I shouldn't do this. There is tremendous fear of can I do this? Like, can I pull this off? This has never been done before, to do a 1,700-mile crossing of the continent.
Yeah.
Even the guy who's tracked every expedition in Antarctica in modern history has said anyone who attempts this will probably fail. So I'm well aware that it is considered even impossible by some adventurers. And I'm well aware of how daunting that is, but I have committed my soul to this thing, last 4 years directly, but in many ways, it's a culmination of like a lifetime of playing on these edges, this hardest thing I've ever done. And I'm not saying this in an egotistical way, just the nature of the feat is it will be one of the greatest feats of endurance to pull this off. So there's always a fear of, am I doing enough to prepare? Can I pull this off? What if I fail? What if I'm 100 days in and I can't cover the distance that I need to cover?
Mhm.
So that fear and that voice is always there. But the key lesson is, even if you have that voice, that it's what you do with it that matters, right? We all go through the voice of who am I, and we kind of demonize this thing. We demonize imposter syndrome, perfectionism. These things are not bad. Like, I love being in rooms where I'm the dumbest person in the room and I feel stupid. That's how you learn. Right before this, we were chatting about looking for gaps. I'm always looking for a gap to fix. And it's constantly that wondering of, am I doing enough, that has me strive for perfection. Perfectionism is also not bad. I want to be perfect, knowing that I may never be perfect, but the more I can close that gap to perfection, that's the path, that's the pursuit. So these thoughts are not inherently negative or bad. They just are. And we're all going to experience these thoughts. It's what you do with them that really matters. And I've learned to, over the years, and obviously had some rocky moments, was far from perfect at a certain time, but learned over the years to find value in the darkest of thoughts, in my demons. I might have shared this at that event, but even when I lost a friend to the war, I struggled with survivor's guilt around that. And so for a long time, after kind of rising from that abyss with alcohol, I put that picture of my friend that I lost in the war up on my wall, and it said, "This should have been you. Earn this life." So my guilt became my ally. Those were my demons, and I still deal with that. I have never forgotten my friend. I still wrestle with that desire, that feeling that I need to earn this life. But again, now it's valuable. Now it's fuel, and it drives me in such an empowered way.
Yeah, exactly. It's true. It is your ally. It can't like those thoughts can be your ally. And even I think
Yeah,
fear can be your ally because it could be
absolutely.
telling you what you need to close gaps on, what you
Absolutely.
need to overcome some of that fear.
Mhm.
What I especially like about your story is that like, yeah, there's fear, but I'm still doing it. Like it doesn't, it's not stopping me from what it is that I feel called to do. Right.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, yeah, fear can be our friend, all emotions. We can try to befriend all of our emotions. And I really love what you said. It's literally like, it's what you do with them. It's like, what's the
Yeah.
actions that you're taking, or not taking, right? Depending
Exactly.
on how you interact with that emotion. But
Mhm.
yeah, so I want to also to ask you, like, when you've had your previous expeditions and you've had those moments of enlightenment, can you share a little bit about what that experience is like?
Sure. I think to me, like to step back, I guess, what is enlightenment? And I'm not saying my definition is the right definition. I don't think it's a destination because I think until the day we die, there's always more growth to be had. There's more work to be done, right? So it's not like you get there and you've arrived and now everything's magic and golden. So to me, there are these momentary glimpses of oneness where you see, you feel, you know, not just conceptually, but viscerally, you know that there is a connection. You're experienced it. It's embedded into your soul at that point between alignment within and without, right? You feel oneness, all of it. And like, I think one of the most tangible versions of that was when I did a darkness retreat. So I've done two darkness retreats, one for 7 days, the other for 10 days, where you sit in a completely dark room 24/7. I mean, it's so dark you can't see your hand in front of you. And the first time I did this, I think I was 5 days in or something like that, 4 or 5 days in, and I saw a bright white light. I mean, blindingly bright. It was so blinding, this white light, that I was covering my eyes to shield my eyes from this light. I was touching my eyelids because I couldn't tell if they were open or closed, and it was blinding. And here I am sitting in literally a room where there's zero light in there. It's pitch dark. And you know, there's definitely, like, people will say the neurological explanation because they say that when you're in that level of darkness for an extended period of time, your brain starts to release DMT. So you go through these kind of hallucinogenic experiences. And throughout my darkness retreats, both of them, I saw many lights. But this was a really profound moment of seeing light and darkness coexisting, you know? And that became a kind of fundamental ethos that at a meta level is what Fearvana is too. It's fear and nirvana, two seemingly contradictory ideas that are in fact complementary. And in life, you know, there's all kinds of dualities that exist in the human experience. There's masculine, feminine, life, death, ego, humility, contentment, discontentment, pain, pleasure. And we often demonize one side of a duality as bad, right? We look at it as, I mean, even they'll say if a man is feminine, that's bad, or if a woman is masculine. And again, not everybody, but you know what I mean. We kind of say this. But look, I have feminine tendencies, I have masculine. We all do, right? And it's the value, the oneness is recognizing that all these seemingly contradictory forces, that not only they can coexist, but they must coexist. If you want to find true alignment, inner peace, not just within, but even without, even externally, you see how the darkness and the light can coexist. Pain and pleasure can coexist. And so when you start, you know, when you introduced me, you said I play on the edge. Like, yes, I play on the edge of suffering, but I also play on the edge of joy. I also play on the edge of fun, of lightness, you know? So playing on all edges of all dualities, and these experiences on the edges have allowed me to taste these moments of pure oneness where it's almost like I wasn't even fully there because I was so one, you know. And I've experienced this in the darkness and other expeditions. Then I also often have what I call these spiritual downloads where these insights will hit me, you know, while I'm on expedition. And again, happy to share some of those as well. But they're like many profound learnings that hit me. And these are all these momentary glimpses of just awakenings of the soul that ultimately is why I go to these edges. Because it's only on the edge that you find something you've never found before, because you have to do something and go somewhere where you've never been before, right? So the bigger the dragon that you battle, the greater the treasure that you unearth. And I'm going out there for those treasures of the human soul, not just for me, but and it's not just my soul, it's you're tapping into the human spirit. That's coming back to the point of the oneness. And then the responsibility that for me earning this life is bringing it back and sharing it with people like yourself on platforms like this, or speaking at events, or working with people to bring that wisdom back so others can use the same weapons to navigate their own darkness.
Oh, I love that. So, what is some of that wisdom that you found on the edges?
So yeah, some of these spiritual downloads that hit me, you know, last time I was solo in the Arctic, and I was skiing in very challenging snow conditions. It had just there was a dump of snow. I got hammered by a couple of polar storms, and so there was very soft snow. So as I'm going through soft snow with a heavy sled, it's hard work. If the snow was harder, it would be much easier.
Mm.
So often in these conditions, it's very easy to say, I wish the snow was harder. I wish there was better weather. And instead, I just kept saying, thank you, God, for these perfect conditions. And in a very concrete way, I realized that, you know, most of life, what happens is beyond our control. And the thing that robs us from the perfection of each moment is us,
Yeah.
because everything is perfect in its isness, because it cannot be anything other than what it already is. Everything is perfect because it cannot be anything other than what it already is. So instead of saying, I wish this didn't happen to me, I wish the weather wasn't this way, I wish my son didn't get hurt or whatever. You can't control it. And this doesn't mean you aren't allowed to feel the emotions of it, but resisting the isness is the primary cause of unnecessary. It's really the only cause of unnecessary suffering. This is not to say you don't suffer. Like dragging the snow in the sled was still hard work, but the unnecessary suffering was that inner dialogue of, oh God, it's perfect because that's what it is. So it's
Right.
perfect. That was one of a few others. And again, happy to share, but I don't want to keep going on. Happy to share more if you'd like. But that was one of such a kind of moment of, and this is when you have these moments, it's not even just a conceptual understanding. It's a very visceral knowing. And there's a distinction between the two. Because when something is conceptual in a learning, it's a thought. Thought is slow, right? We're thinking about it. When it's a knowing, it is you. It removes the space between the thought and the action because it's now embedded in who you are. It's in the soul, right? It's in the spirit. So that's the value of playing on the edge, is because you can get insights from listening to a podcast, reading a book. That's all not like valuable. It's not, bad or anything. It's valuable, but knowledge is gained from learning. Wisdom is gained from experience. And so to get the true wisdom, you have to step into your arena, whatever your arena is. Crossing Antarctica is certainly not the only path to enlightenment, but whatever your arena is, it's to step into that. And you're going to suffer. You will struggle. That's the nature of playing on an edge, is that you're off balance, right? But that's where you will find that wisdom.
Right. And you have to get off balance to find your balance, right? Like
Absolutely.
be willing to go off balance. And I love the whole idea about the isness, because it
Yeah,
was if it was going to be different, it would have been different, but it wasn't. So it is.
exactly.
And I think like when I look back even in my life, when I think about, like where do I have disappointments? It's mostly because reality is not matching my expectations. And reality is maybe the isness, right? And then the expectations are our needs, wants, desires, how we want things to go and happen, and it's like when there's that gap, that's where we sort of have our own, like, I know I've heard you say something like everybody's sort of battling their own polar storms. And,
Yeah,
it's true. And it's in our
absolutely.
heads and it's in our hearts. And it's, like we do feel that suffering. But I love the perspective that you bring in that, like, embrace it or play with it, or like it can be there. We don't need to say that it's bad, or we think like if we've had a bad day that that was a write-off, but it's like, okay, but you wouldn't even know what a good day is if you didn't have a bad day. So don't write it off, learn from it, figure out how you can process it and utilize it. So I really like what you say in terms of like the duality and being able to use both and using them together. Actually, I've never heard this before, but it
Yeah,
actually feels great because it gives us permission.
exactly.
Like it gives us permission to have pain, to have suffering, for all to be part of the human experience, and it's beautiful,
Mhm.
you
That
know?
is, I mean, I love that you pointed out about the permission, because I've worked with people who they'll go through anxiety and they feel like they shouldn't feel that way. I
Yeah.
worked with somebody who would get anxiety every time he would sit down on his laptop to write. And then he would berate himself for feeling that way. What's wrong with me? I'm a piece of shit, whatever that inner dialogue, that was some of the things he'd say. And we all kind of do that. We can relate to that inner dialogue. But the key is accepting the isness, and is just external. Because as I said, we don't control most of our thoughts and feelings, that they arise as a result of external stimuli, right? Like if something happens right now and somebody comes into this room with a gun, I'm going to feel fear. I'm not choosing it. That's not a choice that I made. But that's also accepting the isness. Got it. And this takes practice to develop that mastery, to be with an emotion and notice it without reacting to it, but to notice it and then respond to it consciously from a higher place of who you actually want to be and how you want to show up in the world. But the more you practice it, the more you can say, got it, this is happening. It's not bad. It's not good. Anxiety is not bad. Guilt is not bad. Sadness is not bad. Yes, some emotions are more challenging than others, but they're not bad. And to your point, you can't have a summit without a valley, So the more you kind of learn to train in the struggle and the challenging emotions, the more you develop such a comfort with them that when they show up, like now when it shows up, granted, I'm obviously seeking out suffering. So a lot of my suffering is chosen because I get to seek it out, but it's not to say that suffering doesn't happen that I don't choose. Just a few months ago, one of my Marine mentors was killed in a combat zone, and I didn't choose that, but it broke my heart, and that there's something there. There's something there to honor my friend, to have his legacy live beyond just his life and through my deeds. He was a mentor that guided me. So every struggle we endure, there's an opportunity. I often say, if I'm hit hard by life, thank you, God, for this opportunity. Got it. What's the opportunity? And if you ask what's the opportunity, you'll find something. And there always is an opportunity. I don't care how bad the situation, there is something. There is something there for you to find to transcend, you know? And again, I get it. Like people are in very extreme scenarios. I've worked with people who are former child soldiers, have been to war zones, survivors of sex trafficking, and it's very, very hard. I can't even fathom in that extreme scenario. So kind of sidestepping that for a second, most of us, if you're listening to this, you're in an environment where you have some luxuries that many don't, and whatever suffering is inflicted, and it is inflicted, life punches us in the face, but there's something for you to seek from that to grow, and if you do it, you'll be able to find meaning in it and come out of it stronger.
Yeah. And do you think that people are not asking those questions, like when there is suffering, when there is hardship? Because I agree. Like I think even just our subconscious goes to work when we ask those questions. We could ask the question and like a couple months later, something will appear because we asked that question, right?
Absolutely.
Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
I think to your point, I do think we're not asking. I mean, a lot of times when bad things happen and people be like, why me?
yeah.
That's a useless question to ask, and I get it. Like it's not a judgment. I get it, but it's not a helpful question to ask, Instead, and that's coming back to the point of resisting the isness.
Mhm,
This happened. It can't happen any other way because it already happened.
mhm,
So got it. That's perfect because it happened that way. And I know like it's hard to wrap your head around saying something horrific is perfect. But what I mean is it's perfect because it happened that way and it can't have happened any other way than what happened. You know
right.
what I mean? And so when you accept that moment and the isness of that, got it. That happened. What am I, instead of saying, why me? What can I do with this? And that's what even I started doing. Like I struggled with, for me, the why me was, why do I get a good life? Not so much when bad things happen. It was, I'd seen people in war zones and conflict zones. I've worked with I've been in the darkest corners of the human experience. And the only reason I was blessed with a million times more opportunities than many people in places I've been to were because I was born to good parents,
Yeah.
parents who loved me and took care of me, and they were middle class, but now wealthy. And and so as a result, I'm blessed with a great life. I didn't do a damn thing to earn that. Yes, I've worked hard to get where I'm at, but I didn't do a damn thing to earn the light years ahead of most people on earth who were just born into hell just simply by being born there. So I used to ask that, why me? Why do I get this? And there is no answer to that. Like even when I was in Iraq, my vehicle drove over an active bomb. It didn't explode for some reason. My friend's vehicle drove over an active bomb. It exploded and he died. Why
Mm,
me? Why do
yeah.
I get to live? Right? And there's no answer to that. Instead, saying, now, what can I do with this? How can I be of value to this life? How can I be worthy of this life that I've been gifted and make a difference in our human family through this life that I've been gifted? You ask that different question, you start finding new answers, and then you take action on those answers.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And I think, yeah, a lot of people do like what you mentioned earlier is that you had that survivor's guilt, like why me and not, why them, not me, like why? And I think
Mhm.
like personally, I feel like it's because your work's not done. Like you're here and you have a mission, they like your soul is calling you to something, to do something, to complete something, to create something, to impact something. And it's like if we can take it of like, because we're not done, right? Like we can't see what's in the future, but we have to trust that it's in our path, right?
Yeah, I love that. I read this one book too from Harold Kushner, who wrote this book, Why Bad Things Happen to Good People. And in it, he says this line that touched my soul. He said, the dead depend on us for their redemption and their immortality. And
Oh,
that helped me reframe the people I've lost on my journeys, that yes, their lives are no longer, they're dead. They're no longer physically alive, but their spirit never dies. I mean, like Viktor Frankl and books I've read of people I've never met,
yeah.
died before I was even born, some of these people, but they have left a mark on my soul that as a result, like if anybody's impacted by my work, it's not just because of me, it's because of all these people that have come together to play a role. So my friends, Neil, Dale, who have lost, they are a part of me. And through my deeds, we honor them. Right. It was on, instead of wasting my life drinking myself stupid with guilt, I'm not honoring his life. I'm not honoring anything. I'm not honoring life itself. So the dead depend on us for their immortality, and we honor them through our deeds.
What a mind shift, but and how true, how true. Wow,
Mhm.
that's profound. That is profound. Thank you for sharing that, actually.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's gonna impact me in the best of ways.
Yeah, glad to hear.
So tell me right now, I know you're in Norway.
Mhm.
How are you preparing for your trip in November?
So yeah, as you mentioned, currently in Norway. I'm here. I just got here about a week ago. I'm learning how to cross-country ski more efficiently on racing skis. So very thin skis, unlike the ones I'll be using on expedition. The idea is it's kind of similar. Like if I learn how to lift 50 pounds, 25 pounds is going to feel like nothing, right? So similarly, if I can ski on harder skis, the easier ski, the skis that are easier, I can move more efficiently. I can move smoother and save energy that I'll need for this daunting journey ahead. So learning how to ski more efficiently, improving my balance. I'm learning from a polar mentor of mine who's one of the world's greatest polar coaches, like wealth of wisdom in the arena of polar adventure and polar exploration. So learning from them and just here to soak in wisdom. I'll be alone for 110 days, but it's an army of people that have come together to make this happen. From people who train me, coach me, nutritionists, doctors, people who've contributed to our fundraising campaign. And so here it is learning from this polar mentor. And I've got 5.5 more weeks here to, by the time I'm done, I want to be skiing like a Norwegian. So some of the best skiers in the world are Norwegians,
Yeah,
cross-country skiers, especially. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And like, when you've done previous expeditions, how many days have you gone like by yourself?
I just got back right before coming to Norway. I was in Iceland and I did a 20-day solo expedition out there. So
Okay.
that's actually the longest I've done solo.
That's the longest you've done solo, and you're going to be doing 110 days
110 days.
in.
Significant. Exactly. The solitude is actually the thing I'm least worried about. I'm not personally, not to say I know for some people when they hear about this journey, that's the thing that freaks them out the most. But for
Mhm.
me, it's the thing I'm least worried about. I'm going to thrive in the solitude because there's a great quote from Rumi who says, silence is the voice of God. All else is poor translation. And so that level of silence and solitude, I mean, I can't wait to have those, what I call conversations with God, those spiritual downloads. So that's the thing I'm not that worried about. It's more for me, the sheer distance I have to cover on a daily basis to hit that target of 7 to complete the coast to coast crossing. That's the biggest fear and the worry.
So it's more like the physical aspects of having to cross that distance, that the skiing day in, day out. Like it's more the, can your body handle it,
The
perhaps?
body handle it, the mind handle it. Because I mean, I'll be dragging a 400-pound sled. So the body is putting through a tremendous amount of work. And when you're doing it in a place like Antarctica, there's no stimuli to engage you. So unlike, let's say, mountain climbing, often people compare it to, let's say, Everest or something like that.
Mhm.
It's much more dynamic on a mountain. As you go up and down the mountain, the terrains change, the views change. You're forced to be in flow, because the mountain is it's much more dangerous than what I'm doing. But mine is what at polar travel is not as dangerous as mountain climbing, but it's a lot more suffering because
Yeah.
you are just skiing into empty white nothingness every day, day after day after day. It looks the same, it feels the same, it is the exact same, and there's no stimuli to engage the mind, and that is mentally daunting to say the least. It is quite taxing on the mind.
You know what? I didn't even think about that, but it's sort of like the view doesn't change. Like
Exactly.
light, it all looks the same. Am I even moving forward?
Yep.
And like,
It's
what if,
just
yeah. And then
sorry,
like,
go ahead.
I was gonna ask, like, what about the cold? Like, what are the temperatures and how do you handle that?
I'll experience the gamut from, and this is Celsius, a minus 10 Celsius. So what is that? Like, I guess 20 something Fahrenheit to minus 40 Celsius, which will be which is also minus 40 Fahrenheit. At that point, they equal, so it is unforgiving. I've been in Antarctica before. As I think I mentioned, I lost 2 fingers to frostbite from my last expedition out there. So the cold is very unforgiving, but I've trained in many expeditions. I've been in the Arctic, in Alaska, in Iceland. I've been multiple expeditions to learn how to master being with the cold. And so you're able to, because doing everything when it's that cold, especially when it's like the minus 40-degree days, doing everything is hard. Doing everything is hard. You have full mittens on, you have to navigate things like that. The little things you don't think about, moving zips up and down, because you can't grab a zip with the thing. So tying strings on the zips to extend it. So every little detail has to be thought through. Every little detail is weighed out. I mean, even to save weight on my sled, I've cut tags off my shirt. I cut my toothbrush in half to save a few more grams. Every piece of gear is ruthlessly looking at to see where can I save more weight, and just getting like, I mean, the level of detail, that's what it takes to achieve mastery, and not just this, but anything, is the details that add up to make a big difference. And so I've gone pretty ruthless, and navigating the cold is similar, as every little thing has been thought through.
Wow, you're right. That's amazing. That's amazing. So as so when you're in sort of, the terrain or the difficult weather and like you're exhausted and you're tired and you're not thinking positively at this point because you're in so much suffering, where does your mind go at that point?
There's over decades of kind of doing a lot of hard things, from running ultra marathons to doing these expeditions. I've developed this mental armory of different places to go in the mind when you're in that spot. And those places vary, it's not just one. This is what I learned over the years. Is one of my favorite questions to ask polar travelers is, what do you say to yourself when you're in the pain cave? Is my version of kind of your question. And you'll get different answers. So the thing is, there's no one right answer, but you learn by practicing what works when you need it. So, for example, like sometimes when I'm in that spot and I'm skiing, I'll want to escape the pain by listening to music, distracting myself from it. Other times, I go deeper into the pain. I've literally gone on some long runs where I'll imagine the devil himself coming out of hell. So because I'll be like, I want the devil himself to commit the entirety of his being to destroy my soul. Because I will then call forth more pain and look for that pain and thrive in that pain. Other times I'm escaping it. Sometimes I'll remind myself that I get to choose my own suffering. That's a luxury many people in the world do not have, right? So yes, I'll suffer in Antarctica, but I get to choose that. And so just gratitude is another huge one. Remembering that I'm so grateful I get to do this. Or even when I'm in that like the deepest, lowest of the lows, is reminding myself, this is why I'm here. This moment when it's the absolute worst, this is what you are here for, because that moment is the opportunity to transcend. That moment, like it's a place that I literally call the moment, that when you're in the moment, that's when you have to find something so deep within your soul to transcend. And that gift, that what you find within yourself, that's everything. So I'll remind myself, this is why you're here, or things like thanking God for that opportunity, reminding myself that this is not about me. This is a part of something so much bigger. So these are all kind of various different toolkits I have in the mental arsenal of just accessing when you need it. But it's been a lot of experimentation to figure out, what works when you need it. Sometimes I have this place that I go to, I call the cage, where I literally visualize myself like a feral wolf inside a cage, and I start kind of growling. I mean, it's madness, But I've done this on expeditions, and it's just very animalistic. But I'll growl, I'll yell to myself, and you just get fully savage, And that's another beautiful place to go. So you sometimes also like coming two more places I go is tapping into the darkness. So I think about my friends that have died. I think about all the suffering I've endured. I remember that I need to earn this life that I've been gifted, So going into that place, and other times it's light. All the people who've supported this, like I just feel so grateful for them, and it's kind of, I owe it to them to keep pushing forward when I'm in the low. So I think about what a blessing it is to experience Antarctica. How many people get to experience that? So all these different weapons in the mental arsenal are different places that I access when needed.
Yeah, that's so cool. And you use what you need when you need it, depending on the circumstance.
Exactly.
I think that
Exactly.
like the next thing, which is like I feel like you really have to know yourself, right?
Hmm.
What you need to give yourself in those moments,
Hmm.
to give yourself encouragement. Do you need to beat yourself up a little bit? What is
Exactly.
it that's going to get you to the next step, to the next minute, to the next, like what's going to move you forward? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And you play with that, for anyone listening, like go into your arena and play with that. Because yeah, sometimes, I can't berate myself because I'll be like, oh, come on, you can do this kind of thing. Other times I do, to your point, I'll berate myself. Like I go marine mode on myself,
Yeah.
So, but they all work. They all work. You just have to find what works when you need it.
Right. Yes.
Mhm.
And I think that like when you spend a lot of time by yourself, you really do get to know yourself.
Exactly.
There's
You
nothing
start.
distract you. And I think that's why, like, when you're doing your expeditions, or say you're going to go for a walk, like I think there's someone who wrote a book that was like, go and walk, go outside, get outside your door and walk for 12 hours and then come back home. And
Mm,
you'll be amazed about, like, I forgot the name of the book, but it's like you will be amazed about what you find out about you if you
yeah.
let yourself go walk for 12 hours.
Yeah.
It's in your head.
Absolutely.
It's pretty cool. A lot of us don't give ourselves the permission to just go and do that. And a lot of us also are sort of scared about, well, what are we going to find?
It
Like,
is. And it is. Yeah. I think, Carl Jung said people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. And I think one of the greatest fears that the human beings have is stillness, is being still with the mind. And our world could not be more evidence of that, right? We do everything to distract ourselves from ourselves. So to your point, whether it be walking, sitting still, going to a dark room, being with yourself, it's scary. It is terrifying, but that's how you unearth what happens within. And when in the process of unearthing, it's not just, when you sit still with yourself, you're opening doors within yourself. And what comes out those doors is not just the sunshine and rainbows. It's also the darkness and the demons. But if you don't bring them to the surface, as Carl Jung also said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. So
yeah.
that's what stillness does. It brings the unconscious to the conscious. So now you can use it. You can channel your demons don't go away. You just learn to work with them and ally with them on your mission.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. And I've been consuming a lot of, like, I'm sure Dr. Jeff Spencer. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
consuming a lot of his work and his teachings, and I was taking one of his courses this week. And when you want to become more conscious of your unconscious, one thing that he teaches is, like, check your inbox. Like, when you wake up, your first 5 minutes, when
Mm-hmm.
you're sort of in that alpha rise state, like, check in with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that I should be mindful of today? Is there anything that came into my awareness that could be helpful? And I think that that's kind of one of the ways that we can tap into, or make the unconscious a little bit more conscious. But how
Absolutely.
many of us sort of just get up and get going and get busy and start checking our
Yeah,
emails, and then it's like, oh, but then we lose that window of opportunity where we could have actually brought the unconscious and made it conscious. you know
absolutely.
yeah. So, I mean, I think, like, I would agree. Yeah. I think we do struggle with stillness. I think we don't know what to do with ourselves. And sometimes, like, I work with a lot of entrepreneurs and high achievers, and I think we also think that, like, if we're not doing, we're not productive, right?
Yeah.
Is wanting to be doing, which, like, for me, I always feel like, okay, the doing needs to be balanced with the being.
Mhm.
Sometimes
Duality. Exactly.
duality.
Exactly.
Yeah. So if someone wants to say, take a step closer to your world, maybe try to start doing some meditation or stillness, or, like, do something that really lets them tap back into themselves. What are some things that people can do to start, kind of take those baby steps into discovering their soul and, their consciousness?
Yeah. I think one thing you mentioned is go for a walk. Obviously, the idea is you don't listen to music or something. Go for a walk. But I think, I have one kid who heard what what I was up to. He ended up locking himself in a closet, a dark closet, for 12 hours, which I thought was badass. I was like, this is awesome. Like, that kid really, like, dove into the deep end. So I recommend, you don't doesn't have to be 12 hours. Maybe be an hour, half an hour. Like, whatever the thing is, it should make you feel uncomfortable.
Okay.
If it feels easy, then you're not pushing hard enough.
Right.
The thing should be. So I had one other guy who, again, heard what I did, was very inspired. He went and locked himself in a dark room for 24 hours, and did a 24-hour fast. So I was like, that's awesome. So find your own flavor of that wherever you're at right now. And there's no right, wrong. We all start somewhere, but do something. I think putting yourself in a dark room is, and again, it doesn't have to be sort of pitch darkness. That's very hard, if not impossible, to create at home without sort of you'll have some ambient light come in, and that's okay. The point is you're still being still with yourself. So do that, go put yourself in the closet and just sit there. The idea is you don't fall asleep, otherwise you're kind of cheating. You're missing the whole point. So do it when you're not tired, but go in for an hour, go in for 2, push yourself, do 5, do 6, do 12. Because to your point, many people who are high achievers will think that, oh, this is a waste of time, but doing nothing is not the same as stillness. Those are two very different things. Conscious stillness will help you move faster at your craft. you will get better at your craft because you will get to know yourself more. You will bring those things to the surface and you'll be able to use them as weapons in the battle to whatever battle you're fighting, right? So that stillness that I've taken on is undoubtedly getting me better at my craft, 100%. It's not even an inkling of doubt. So remembering that doing nothing is not the same as stillness. This is conscious, engaging stillness for a purpose, for that unearthing of the treasures within the soul. But I would say starting with that, whether it be a walk or just even a meditation, my suggestion is kind of putting yourself in a dark environment for a period of time that makes you uncomfortable at the prospect of doing it. And when you feel uncomfortable, when you feel fear, coming back to what we said earlier, you don't beat yourself up. It's okay to feel fear. It's normal. That's my whole point, is you should feel afraid, right? But the only way out of these things is through. The only way out of any challenging emotion is through. I worked with somebody who had PTSD after the Boston bombing. And while we were chatting a little bit, she kind of said, I told her that next time you hear a loud noise and you kind of jump and you feel that hypervigilance, I just want you to pause and just be with it for a second. And she goes, yeah, but that's really hard. And I go, I know it's really hard. And it's not her fault, right? This is not sort of an attack on her, but she wanted to get out of that hard feeling without going through the hard thing. And you can't. I mean, you can try to escape it, but we all kind of know where that's taken me. And it's not gonna get you anywhere valuable. So the key in life, always remember, like, whatever path you choose, you're gonna suffer. So I always like to say, if you don't seek out a worthy struggle, you're gonna struggle anyway. So the question is, which struggle do you want to endure? The existential dread of living a life that never truly was aligned with who you are and who you want to be, or the struggle it takes to actually pursue that path? I could not go to Antarctica, and in some ways it'll be easier. In many ways it'll be easier, but the suffering of never actually being the highest version of myself is not a suffering I want to endure. So I'll endure, and this is my version of Antarctica, whatever, take your own flavor of what Antarctica means, right? But for me, it's like, I will suffer that to be me, to choose to be the version of me that I seek to be. That is a suffering I would rather endure any day of the week versus looking back at my life 40, 50, 60 years from now and saying, I wasted it. I didn't do what I was meant to do here on this earth, right? So you're going to suffer. What struggle do you want to endure?
Right, right. And I think the worst suffering of all is regret, because
Absolutely. That's a hell.
change it.
Exactly. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's one tool that you do all the time, is like, I actually have a note on my phone that even says, 6 months left of the biggest battle of your life. You do not want to be 60 looking back, wondering if you could have done more to cross Antarctica. That will destroy your soul. Every moment, every day means the difference between victory and a lifetime of hell. Just to your point, looking back, regret. I don't want to be 60, 70, 80, looking back on a life being like, I wish I could have done more.
Wow. And the way you're headed, I don't think you will be.
Thank you.
That's
Appreciate you.
wow. So actually, what do you need? What do you need to make this successful? Are you still do you still have a page for people to contribute? Like,
Yeah,
what
thank
now?
you for asking. So we are raising funds for this journey. It's quite expensive to pull this off. It's $750,000, and that's not a number I just made up. ALE, Antarctic Logistics and Expeditions, they're the ones who gave me this number because that's what costs for flight to some of the most remote regions of the world, paying for medical staff, a radio operator, a pilot in some of these remote corners for such a long period of time, because they're extending the Antarctic season just to pull this off. Normal Antarctic season is 85 days. They have to extend it just for me, essentially, to pull off a 110-day journey. So we've raised about $400,000 so far through a crowdfunding campaign online at greatsoulcrossing.com. That's great, SOUL crossing.com. And I give away different tools. Like, one of the things is 25 different weapons to navigate the pain cave. I have a few with you here. And deep dive trainings that I've cultivated over decades of playing on the edge on achieving mastery at your own craft and navigating your own version of a polar storm. And so we give away different tiers. We're also filming a documentary around this. So, you can even potentially be an investor in the documentary. And I think because the key is, like, this is not just about me doing this thing. It's like the Roger Bannister 4 Minute Mile effect, right? Who hasn't kind of heard that story? Because when we see deeds being pushed, the envelope being pushed, the boundaries of the human spirit being pushed, it touches all our souls. And we're going to film a documentary to tell that story, And it's already, I mean, hundreds, if not thousands of people have come together right now to even get me here. from the amount of people that have donated to get us to $400,000 to nutritionists, doctors, people who are training me, all of that. So together we will achieve something quite magnificent. And any contribution, every bit, no matter how small, all adds up and really makes a difference. So every bit would be very, very well appreciated and very well received.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I'll make sure to also link it up in the description of the YouTube video below of where you can go to help Akshay on this amazing, amazing journey. And if people want to follow you, also follow follow your story, follow your progress. Where are you in terms of social media? Where can they go to best connect with you?
Instagram is at Fearvana, Fearvana. And I share the lessons while training. And eventually, when I do set foot in Antarctica, there'll be a live tracker kind of following along. And my wife will be kind of sharing some of the updates from the ice as well while I'm out there.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Akshay. We will link everything up below. I think you need to go and follow Akshay. I've never seen anyone as courageous as you. I don't want to say fearless because I know we all have fear, but it's
Absolutely.
just the way that it's your relationship with fear, it's your relationship with suffering, and how you show such beauty in the ability to embrace all the dualities of life. I think that, like that speaks to me, that speaks to my heart, and it speaks to my soul. So I want to acknowledge you and I want to thank you for really who you are in your being and how you show up in this world. I think you bring a lot of light because there is so much darkness.
Mhm.
And I believe that everybody has light. It's like it's your willingness to embrace your light and
Mhm.
share your light is that's the beauty. So Akshay, I just want to thank you so much for coming on today, sharing your story. I think you're going to be inspiring millions with what you're doing, and I can't wait to see you break the records, and I can't wait to see you make history because you will.
Thank, thank you so much for the kind words, for the belief, for the support, and for having me on. Appreciate you, Mary.
Here, talk to you soon.